This is the first of several presentations dealing with, it's not really presentations, hands-on workshops dealing with ADAPT. So as was mentioned multiple times so far today, ADAPT is the homework infrastructure. ADAPT was, we started building ADAPT in 2020. With funds from the California Education and Learning Lab. So it was a state of California project that we used in order to be able to expand it. It had a little bit of funds from a federal aid grant that we had, the Open Textbook Pilot Award that we got in 2018. And now it's supported from a handful of other institutions, and we're hoping in order to be able to really expand it out. I'll give you the history just so you get a general idea about how it's structured. In that ADAPT is designed in, or at least was sold on in a proposal as an infrastructure to facilitate adaptive learning in general chemistry. So it's very narrow scope that was out there. And then we came up and said, well, look, if you want to be able to facilitate adaptive learning, you need to have a broad question infrastructure, and not just say here are the only questions that you can do it in, because that doesn't seem like it's aligned with the way that we operate with maximal flexibility. And the second one is that we didn't want to focus just on general chemistry. We wanted to be able to go broadly out there. But that's the reason why ADAPT is called ADAPT, is because of the adaptive learning capabilities, not just the questioning infrastructure on that. And that was part of our learning trees, which we'll be discussing a little bit later on today. So the goal of this discussion is just to get you comfortable with using ADAPT, understand where you can find courses, how you can actually quickly build a course, quickly build an assignment, find questions that goes into those, clone questions. We're not going to go into a lot more detail of some of the more advanced question types that are there, but the key point is to get it so that you can actually start to use this functionally out there. And again, if anyone has any questions or concerns, please put them in the chat or in the question and answer based system, just so that I know that everybody is on track. So with that being said, please load up an ADAPT browser, or load up a browser or tab that has ADAPT sign in, and sign in with your register with your Libra One account. I'm again going to be taking a look to see if anyone has requested a Libra One account for this, and no one has appeared to have done so in the last moment. So I'm going to assume that everybody here is all ready to rock. So once you sign in, what's on the screen right now is the instructor perspective or instructor view of ADAPT. So there can be a student view and there can be an instructor view. Most of what we're going to be dealing with will be the instructor view. If you want to switch down to a student view, you'll have a little when you go into a course, you'll have a little toggle switch that'll be up here. This looks slightly different than your guys' interface because I'm logged in with an administrator account, not a demo account. So it has this thing called control panel. You don't have control panel. So you just have support and dashboard. And that right there is largely the top interface. After that, this right here is going to be a set of what's called breadcrumbs, which tells you as you start to go down into the course and into assignments, they'll start to flesh out there. It's a standard breadcrumbs that's found in lots of other websites. And then right here, you have the courses. Now, I've been using ADAPT since 2021. And at that time, everything was open-ended. We didn't have auto-graded capabilities. I think we even may have done it in fall of 2020, but I've deleted it. So these are all the courses that I have used ADAPT for, live courses with students. So we've had somewhere in the order, at least for me, about 2,000 students use ADAPT over the last 5 years. I was just looking at the statistics that we've delivered 10 million auto-graded questions since that same time. So Senorina says, what should I see when I log into ADAPT? It should it should be actually empty because you don't have any questions. It just looks like this, and none of this stuff down below. Do you see that, Senorina? I'm going to assume that's a yes. If not, I will be paying attention to the chat in order to be able to address it. So here's the deal. I just want to show you a structure of a class from our side before starting to build it, which will make things a little bit easier. Oh, this is just a course that I call Sandbox, Kevin. Just like it's a course that I call demo or a course that I call chemistry, whatever. I just named one Sandbox that's out there. Let's look at I'll look at Sandbox. So this was a course created 2021. Uh, there's some action items on here. If you hover over any of these things, it'll tell you there's the grade book, there's the course properties. This is cloning, which we're going to be doing a bit today. And then this is delete the course. This right here is shown. This is in Canvas speak. This is publish. So if I were to click it like this, students, even if they registered in the class, would not see the class and such. So anyways, let's go into one of these courses. We'll go in the Sandbox. It's not meant to be a course. It's meant to be my junk area that I'm quickly building assignments and things like that. So it's not really the best in order to show, but since it did come up in the chat, I want to bring it up. So this is a 3-level system. We have a course. A course has, oh, we don't have video. Not that it matters much. You have a course. A course has assignments. The assignments have questions. So you have 3 levels that are involved in that. And that's going to be the case across the board. We'll do some deviations with more advanced things like learning trees or discuss it issues, but those are the key essence. Course, assignment, questions. So this is my course, which is Sandbox. These are assignments, and then I can go into one of them. I go into the junk assignment, and then I have questions that are there. And that's the basic infrastructure of a course. Let me go to a real course, not just a Sandbox, and I'll do the course that I ended last month, and that will be, if I can remember what, that's this one here. So here's the course here. Now I'm gonna have to be a little careful because I have I haven't cleared up the course, so there are some students already registered here, so I want to make sure I don't violate any FERPA issues off of here. But again, course assignment questions. So here's the course, here are the assignments, and inside an assignment we'll have questions. So how you formulate your course has a lot to do with your general pedagogy of how you want things to be done. My pedagogy when it comes to homework is I want students to be doing homework every single lecture. I don't want them to be doing an obscene amount of homework, but I do want them to do some homework. So I have homework separated into several classes. One are lecture homeworks, which are homeworks that include 2 to 3 questions. And then I have weekly homeworks, which are weekly homework assignments down here, which consists of 10 to 11 questions. And that's the structure that I have because I want students to constantly have, a dripping drip of their material that they need to be studying. So that's the barest essence. I can go to any of these assignments, look at the question. Here's question. I have 3 questions off of here. There are a bunch of properties associated with the assignments. Most of those we're not going to be going into just because time-wise, at least not going into in this session right here. Adriana, give me 1 second and I'll address your question. So we have these 4 questions off of here. And the first thing to recognize here is besides a title of the question, and every question has its own title that may come from different sources and then may be written different ways. Students don't see the title. They just see question 1, question 2, question 3, unless you decide that you want to show the title. And that makes it easier because then you don't need to worry about numbering or other things that will confuse the students that are out there. Each question, let me phrase it, each assignment has its, in the whole infrastructure, has its own unique ID number, an assignment ID number. Each question has its own question number. A question embedded into an assignment has a double assignment question number. And that's what this adapt ID number is here. So basically this says a question number 122200 is an assignment 1832277. Now at this point, you may be wondering, why do I want that sort of information? You will be wanting that information when you want to start to slice and dice and do these things. But I promised that Adriana address her message. So she asked, I see enroll in a course. Okay, Adriana, if it says enroll in the course, you're signed in with a student account, not an instructor account. Uh, Instructors don't enroll in courses, so you have to request a new account. That's an instructor account, and it has to be a different email address, or I have to go in and switch your account from a student account to an instructor account. And that takes a few moments, but I'm not going to be able to do it in the middle of this session. I'm sorry about that. The Cerise says, she has the link in order to get to the courses. Like I said, I already addressed that discussion. Um, if I create a course to begin to play with, and can I go back and change? You can change anything you want, Kevin. There's only one time where you have limitations off of that, which I'll mention momentarily. Okay, that's it. So the issue that you have, the only time that you can't change something is after a student has submitted something, then the database locks down the table and the structure of the questions, and then you're unable to modify many things, but not all things, but many things. Canvas does the same thing. Many other instances do the same thing because of the fact that you locked it down with the submission. So let's get this thing going. So I was saying, here's question one. Here's a title. I don't care about the title. This just happens to be what it came from. Here's some ID numbers associated with it. This right here tells me the technology. Adapt is designed in a very strange, it's actually not strange, in a way that I thought was strange at the time, which was something akin to how LMSs operate, right? An LMS has this one big infrastructure, and then you have these tools that come in order to empower the LMS to be something greater than what the individual platform is. We have something similar to that. Adapt is this individual core technology, and then we can plug in technologies into it that then operates near seamlessly, so it doesn't matter which technology you use. I mentioned an hour ago H5P. We can use H5P in our platforms right here in Adapt. But we have other technologies like WebWork or iMathAS. iMathAS is underlying MyOpenMath, or there's a fourth one. I said native H5. So we have this thing called native, which is the core technology of Adapt. That's something similar to the native technology, a native quizzing technology that's in Canvas. So you don't use a secondary technology in order to facilitate that. Those are typically for relatively simple questions, what's called QTI questions, or question test interoperability. That's named from the same people who created LTI, learning tools interoperability, one edtech. So that's why it sounds very similar to each other. Anyways, this tells you that this question here is a web work question. This tells me how many points I have it set up here. This tells me with this, if I want to view the solution, and then I have some action items, including being able to edit the question, cloning the question, and deleting the question. So edit the questions will pop up with a whole lot of features off of here. I don't want to bring that up right now because it's going to be a little overwhelming, but I do want to mention cloning. The idea behind cloning is that you can take a question and it's owned by somebody. If it's owned by somebody, you don't have the rights to edit that question. But again, the idea behind Adapt is that it's a community that is building questions that other people can grab from and use. So we want to be able to facilitate a centralized community, but still ensure fidelity for the actual questions that are created, that are not edited on the fly by someone else who just comes in and wants to start editing the question. That would be pretty annoying for you if you were using the questions in your homework. It'd be exceedingly annoying if you're using it in an exam that you are using Adapt for being able to do. So you can't edit other people's questions, but you can clone a question and then adapt it and edit it as you want. And that's what that button actually does there, is then clones it, and then you have ownership in order to be able to do that. So we work a lot with the California Community College OERI, Open Educational Resource Initiative, and their philosophy is not to teach people how to create assignments or courses from scratch, but to just find courses that you like and then clone them, or assignments that you like or questions that you like and clone them and go in that direction, which is a perfectly fine approach in order to be able to do so if you want to be able to advance that. So I'm going to click on this question, and it's going to pop up a view mode, and it shows me the question that's actually there. So the question that the students will see is basically in this box right here. Yeah. In this case here, it asks some questions. It's a numerical submission. I had submitted 1, 2, and 3 here at some previous time. That's there. Um, uh, I have a reset button because I'm an instructor, and that will wipe clean what I had previously submitted there. So it's like a pristine version that's out there. If you were paying careful attention, you may have noticed that these numbers changed on me from the time before I reset it to the time that after. It's because this question here is algorithmic. And I can indicate that by this little twisty forky thing up here. And that means that every student will get a different set of numbers. The underlying question is algorithmic, so it evaluates the submission based on the numbers that are put down here randomly. So it still tests the same thing, but it makes it so that every student gets their own question. Uh, so it makes it a little bit harder for them to be able to cross communicate in order to quickly get the answer that's out there. Doesn't stop ChatGPT. That's a different story for a different time that typically involves a lot of alcohol. But at least this goes through one step in order to make things algorithmic so that you can actually identify that. So uh, uh, this question is locked. That's the example I showed before because someone had already submitted to it. Since they've already submitted responses, I can't update things like the points uh, and a few other things that are on here. It's no big deal. That's the only time that you are unable to modify something after the fact. And then I can come in, I can submit numbers. And this is again web work. And it comes in, and because this is set as a real time, it means I get real response. This is my submission. This is the correct answer. Incorrect points percent. It gives an overview of things, and this what goes into our database. And if this were an LMS enabled course, it would then pass it off to LMS. I can then go question by question, see the next question, see the next question. These are multiple choice questions. This is a simple thing. This is a lecture homework. I don't want students to spend more than an hour or a half hour in order to solve this problem. It's just meant in order to deal with that. So there are a few other things associated with this thing of particular importance. I get a histogram of student submissions. It's just a simple descriptive statistics. It tells me this is a very small class, so it tells me that basically every student got full points on this question. But that's not surprising because it's a relatively simple question. Very first question on the very first assignment that the students do. Yeah. Because we are hosting of OER, Open Educational Resources, we need to follow OER guidelines with these questions, which means we need to provide attribution. So every question has attributions connected to it, and you can click on it and find the attribution. This is meant to be fully compliant with the legality of the questions that we host. And this goes for anything that you use on any open license content you use anywhere, unless it happens to be public domain, you typically have to have some attributions or some other things over here. This thing keeps it on track, so we're 100% legally solid from a compliance issue, um, and such. So, anyways, um, I can easily go into this a little bit more. Let me show you quickly what a question looks like, and then we're going to backtrack and go back out to the courses area. And I'm just doing this because I want you to see a little bit of the complexity that's involved in these courses and involved in questions, and then so that you'll understand when you say, why can't I just know how to build a question really quickly? So I can edit this question at any time using actually this question mark. And each question has a series of tabs associated with it. The first tab is the properties tab. That's like metadata or data connected to the question, including title. I can make a description. Most questions don't have descriptions, but you could do so. Question type, ignore that. If you want it to be public, so only instructors can see, let me phrase that. So instructors can find the question, or if you just want to keep it so only you can use that question. We prefer it to be public for all instructors to be able to do. And I emphasize only instructors are able to see the catalog of questions, the corpus of questions. Students don't. Students only see questions that are shown in an assignment for their course. Otherwise, it would be compromised. Um, there's information about folders, authors, licensing. These are all open license requirements. Source information, where it came from. Meta tags. I can assign meta tags to these questions in order to be able to provide context to finding the questions. Is also good for analytics when you want to make sure that learning objectives are handled properly. And this right here is a specific framework, a subject chapter section that we have already put in place for chemistry. We don't have that for most fields because it takes a bit of effort to build a framework of learning objectives or skills. And we were able to do it for chemistry because that's what we started with. Primary content, that's the actual question. This is web work. Web work questions are built using structured programming. And it's in web work uses what's called Perl. Now, if you have never coded Perl or never coded any structured programming, you're not going to use this question. Let me phrase that. You're not going to edit or build from this question base. Nothing stops you from using the question. In fact, that's perfectly fine. This right here is the question that I showed. Remember, this was an algorithmic question. Every student got a different series of numbers that are randomized. This is also includes significant digits, if that means something to you for the STEM fields or for the science fields, that is very important. Here's the text that shows what the question shows up. Here's the solution that has to be algorithmically changed to, because if the question changes, the solution needs to change. And there you go. So is this daunting to most instructors? Yes, it is. But if you're comfortable with, in this case here, coding in Perl or coding in structured languages, you can pick this thing up relatively straightforward. You can add images, you can do a variety of other things. You'll notice that this right here has 3 blocks off of here. Don't worry about the details behind that. And I'll also mention, anytime you see a button that says Consult Insight, that right there goes to a knowledge-based system. So in this case here, it's going to pop up a section, and it's going to be a section dealing with web work techniques. And this is what you can use in order to learn how to code in web work, or to look at the accounting question types, or look at how to do randomizations or things in Adapt. Or you can extend beyond that and start to look at things like open licensing resources, Studio, textbooks, Forge. We're going to be greatly expanding this in the near future, but it provides a nice go-to perspective or go-to site in order to answer questions like, how do you do an emphasis in PG? And it shows you very clearly here. So keep your eyes on the lookout for this if you have any questions or concerns that are connected here, and such. We have this thing called accessible alternatives. So the idea behind here, and I can ask you guys a question here. Actually, there's a few comments on here. So let me do this before I ask that. Kevin, yes, you can change between an LMS and non-LMS enabled course. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to presume that most people in here have heard, if a technology is not accessible, you shouldn't use it in the classroom. Your campus probably told you this, or your accessibility person on your campus told you this. Is that true? Right. And that's especially important now that the Department of Justice is putting some teeth behind accessibility requirements in order to provide potential for fees for individual campuses. That's not entirely correct. It is mostly correct in the sense that it has to be accessible. The resources have to be accessible, but it's possible to have something not accessible if you have an alternative that is accessible. Now, I use the word alternative. This is not what's called a accommodation. This is an alternative, and you can make a question that uses technology that is not accessible, like many of the graphical things that we use in H5P, or drag and drop. Describing drag and drop technology is difficult in order to do to make accessible, or nearly impossible, because it requires fully functioning vision, or at least somewhat functioning vision, in order to be able to use. However, most questions can be reconstructed into a series of multiple choice questions, and if a student needs that, you can then switch over to using it. So it means that if a question type is not accessible, but is useful for 99.9% of the students out there, why gut it just because it's not accessible for the point one students? Build the alternative question for the point one students, and then you can benefit from both of them. So that's the accessibility alternative is in place here. We have secondary content, we have private notes, we have rubric we can establish off of here. These are not important for the thing. The key point here is first, I'm trying to scare you a little bit about what a question type is involved in, which is probably one of the reasons why OERI likes to clone the questions rather than to go through these individually point by point. Okay, so let me pull back out to the big picture and then we'll start to actually go through here. Abby did ask a question. So does this automatically choose an accessible alternative? It does not automatically do it. The student has to inform the instructor that they require the alternative, typically through the Student Disability Center or something like that. And then you can mark a switch, and then the students see the alternative instead of the principal question that's out there. So okay, so let's get back to this thing. I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to click on the logo, gets me all the way back up to the top. All right. So most of you guys have something empty here. Um, if you click new course, it will create a new course with a handful of different options out there. There are not that many options because we're going to be stepping through that. But before starting to create a new course, let's just talk about the existing courses that we have. So I can import an existing course by clicking on this thing. And if I do that, I just need to get some information behind here. I do want to expand this search capability a bit more than just courses and names. But if I did something like Christina Moon, or we actually had Sarah Harmon give a talk. So here are Sarah Harmon's courses. That should be specific. These are Sarah Harmon's public courses. So these are the courses that she's willing to have other people grab from. She may have some private courses that she doesn't want anyone to grab from. And I will emphasize that when you actually select one of these things to bring in, it only brings in the questions and assignment infrastructure. It does not bring in any students that may be enrolled in that course, which is very important for FERPA protections, right? So I can come in and select any of these courses and decide I want to bring it in. So I can do intermediate Spanish. Okay. It could be imported as a beta course. Ignore that question. It's not worthwhile discussing right now. And this auto release question, just use existing auto release dates and then you import. This will take a moment and this brings it up. And there you go. And now I've brought in the course. And you notice it has this red hue. This red hue means it's unpublished or basically unshown. This thing here gives you, I'm about to unhide the course. It should call it unpublished, but whatever. And now it's a course that students can enroll in and can see things. I can click on here. You notice it says import. And then this course looks like it's still kind of remedial, only has 9 assignments. I can look at each assignment and I'm structured off of there. So at this point, before getting into the other details, I would like you to use your system, use your thing here and find a course that you'd like to import. Now, if you don't find a course that's exactly aligned with what you're teaching, don't worry about it. Find any course that's out there. I just want you to be able to pull in a course right here and then give me some thumbs up or silly faces or something like that once you've actually imported a course that you can hug and hold and call George. I got a few thumbs up. There we go. I got a comment in the chat. Allison has found one. Way to go. And obviously, as we grow, the number of courses you have access to will increase. The easier it is for you to be able to find a course that's more aligned with what you want, and the more powerful it is for everybody. Again, dealing with the fact that this is a community and that every step forward is one step that someone else doesn't have to take. And we want to be able to rely on the open aspect of how we operate in order to be able to move things forward. So Robbie seems to be happy there. Does that GIF do anything? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to presume that everybody, because I saw lots of thumbs up and a few smiles, are have imported a course. So let's just take a look at this thing. So here's the course, and I'm going to look at course properties. Remember, here's the consult insight, and that right there gives a little. This is a little bit of a video that shows you how to actually go through creating a new adapt course. Uh, uh, then there's a few other ones. This is how to make a new assignment. Remember, we have assignments below courses. You can import an assignment just like you can import a course. So if you know someone's specific assignment and someone's specific course you want to bring in, you can do it. It's more surgical. It doesn't happen often, but you have the ability to do that. You have a grade book. You click on the grade book, it's not going to look impressive because it doesn't have any students. So it's just going to be a vector, which I'll do it right here. Just goes across there. Not really that great. Um, and then course properties. This is what I want you to be able to select on here. So I want to look at the course properties that you have here. So this is the course properties. There are lots of things associated with how the courses are used. And most of these things we're not going to have time in order to go over. A few of them we will. Uh, the general information is what I do want to go over because it's the same information that's asked if you want to create a course from scratch. And most of this information you, even for those that have already started playing with it, you can address. It doesn't take much expertise in order to be able to address that. I presume you know what school you teach at. I presume you know the name of the course that you want to teach at. It's nice to have a discipline. We now made that required, even though it doesn't have an asterisk on here. It should be an asterisk that you have to write what field that is. It's easier in order to make it so you can find these questions and slice and dice them. If we don't do that, the vast majority of people don't actually align their questions, their course to any field. A public discussion, this is not necessary, but this is just a nice little discussion for when you're doing a search. You can actually look at the topics here. These are private discussions. Private discussions are like annotations. They're discussions only for the instructors to be able to see. And this is useful, for example, your class is over and you want to write some quick notes on your course in order to make sure that when the summer is over and you're going to be teaching that class again, that you have some notes in order to be able to grab off it. You'll find private discussions to be if several other spots in Adapt. This is textbook URL. This is just if you have a textbook associated with your homework, you can write it down there so students will have a link in order to be able to go through that. Uh, uh, this is modality. Most of the time, things are traditional, which means that it's summative, so that students need to sign in order to see the question. You make it formative, you can actually make it so students don't need to sign in to be the question. You can make a question formative and you can embed it into your textbook. And then any student anywhere can see that question, can submit to it, and get the response that's out of it. Uh, and that could be useful for a lot of purposes. They don't need to sign in. Most of the time, we're going to do traditional. I should probably put this in parentheses as formative. Anytime you see a question mark, you can hover over it and it makes a tooltip, and the tooltip will hopefully give you some advice on how to address these things. This is the term. It has an asterisk, which means it's required to write the term down. It's the start date, and here's the end date. This is public, meaning that you want the course to be viewable by everybody. We do it by default as saying no, because many people create empty courses, junk courses, something like that. And if it's all public, it just gums up the corpus, the central community. So this means that if you want to share your course to everybody, you have to actively click the button in order to be able to share it like that. I'm not going to do that. Alpha is related to this alpha beta thing. The old parlance that would be there is master slave. It's like a master course, a slave course, but we tried to avoid that sort of terminology for a variety of reasons. So we call it alpha and beta. And this right here tells you if it's an LMS. If your campus has LMS enabled, campus has adapt enabled to your Canvas, you'll have a button here that says, is this an LMS course or is it not? I'm going through UC Davis here. So UC Davis has not set it up. I've been meaning to poke them. That's my goal this summer. We'll see if I'm successful at that in order to be able to do. So that is stuff that I can change. That's the same questions that would be asked of me if I want to create a new course. Just to show you that in case you don't believe me, I'm going to go up one level and I'm going to create a new course. And this is the same information that we had before in course properties. Um, and such. So anyways, let's go back to the course that I brought in. and look at the course properties a couple times off here. So everyone has brought in a course. Uh, uh, that course hopefully has assignments. If it's an empty assignment, if it has no assignments, then it really shouldn't be in the collection. And then you have a handful of different things here. It's important or at least discuss about a few of them. Some are easier to talk about. If you have an instructor that you want to be a co-instructor on, you can come in. If you have the email address of that co-instructor on their site, you can type that in, and then they have the same rights to do everything on your platform, on your course, as you do. Um, and that could be useful if you're tag teaming or building with an instructional designer or something. Okay, so sections. This gets into a little bit more complexity behind here. Courses oftentimes have sections, at least on my campus. So that means that we have not just a single course that has 100 students into it, but we have sections that are dedicated in groups of 20 for one reason or another. Each section technically has its own CRN, which is a course registration number. And each section may need to be navigated differently in terms of dates, times, deadlines, and things like that. If you're teaching a relatively small class, you have no sections. Let me phrase it. You have one section, and that's just, we call it main, but you can name it whatever you want. So if that's the case, you can come. If you want to create a new section, you can come in and create a new section. Um, that's here. So if you're teaching at mostly small campuses, uh, then you don't have to do what I just do. When I teach a 500 student class, I have 16 sections that have to be populated out here, each one navigating with different times and dates, for example, when their lab reports are due and things like that. Okay. Um, that's fine. Each section has the ability for students to enroll into the course. So when they enroll into a course, they enroll automatically into a section. If it's just one section, then it's one section. If it's two sections, then they have to be able to know which section that they want to come into. In this case here, it talks about how students interact with ADAPT. If if an ADAPT course is coupled to Canvas, so it's a LMS enabled course, it can be also D2L, Moodle, instead of that, then there's no need for access codes or anything like that. ADAPT talks to the LMS. ADAPT trusts the LMS. LMS trusts ADAPT and passes the roster, passes the student information in order to be able to process. That's the reason why you have to go through lots of hoops in order to be able to do these things. Because if you have some bad actors, they can do bad things. We're not bad actors. At least I believe we're not bad actors. So, anyways, if you don't have an LMS enabled course, the student has to get an ADAPT account, which is freely available when you make a Libre One account. In fact, that's what I believe Adriana did here. She created a student account, not an instructor account. So it behaves differently. But if you have an access code, any student that has the access code can then enroll into that course. So you can just distribute the access code that's out there. And that's fine. We found that if you do this and you distribute access codes broadly, what happens sometimes is students will sign up with their campus email, and then they will re-sign up with their Gmail account, and then they'll re-sign up with their Yahoo account. And so you start gumming up your roster. To try to fix that, we introduce a whitelist, which is a filter saying that only students that have ucdavis.edu, because it took that from my instructor, my email account, are able to register. Even if they have the access code, they need to come in here. So it can introduce more things like gmail.com. And now only people who have one of these two are able to access. And sorry, students that have these email addresses can enter in. Like I said, this is only important for non-LMS enabled courses. If you're in California, the vast majority of people are using LMS enabled courses and such. So I'm going to, so I mentioned sections, I mentioned co-instructors. If you have TAs for your class, that's where you give greater access to them. I'm not sure how many large universities that were here. This is students. This will give a list of rosters for the students. I can actually send out invitations to students if I have their email addresses. This is how I normally do it. So you don't have to give a single access code. Each student has their own unique access code that they come in. Once it's used, it can't be used again. And then this whole whitelist domain thing goes away, and such. So I think there may have been some questions off of here. Kevin mentioned some things dealing with sections based on curriculum. Yes, I think I'm getting what he's saying. Okay, so there are a few other things off of here that are not particularly, I mean, some of them are pretty straightforward. The analytics, the grade book, uh, ignore testers. You're not going to be dealing with testers. It's a testing center, a mode. You can look at a list of all the courses that are open-ended, which require humans to grade, and see if they have been graded. It's convenient in my case when I have TAs that are supposed to be grading problems and they turn out to not be grading problems. And then I want to be able to evaluate if the TAs are really doing what they're doing, and such. I will mention one thing before I leave from that one, and that's the reset course. The reset course is the nuclear option. You click on the reset course, it will erase all students enrolled in the class and all submissions in the class, wiped away. We do this or recommend this normally 100 days after the class is over because we don't want to be sitting on data. We meaning LibreText, because we consider it to be radioactive. Uh, uh, in the process of doing a reset course, it will ask you to, if you want to, you can download the grade book, so you have access to that for longer terms. But we will then pester people for the other 265 days before we actually will step in order to reset it on our side. And again, this is meant because the less data we sit on personally, the less of a risk we have for nefarious actors coming in and hacking in and doing various things. We do a lot in order to protect this stuff, but there are bad actors out there doing bad things. So anyways, are you guys all cool with this general overview of the course structure? Are there any specific questions or concerns other than saying, what's this? What's this? Okay, I got a bunch of thumbs up, no thumbs down. So let's go back to the course. So this is the course that I created. I'm going to delete I'm going to delete all the assignments that were in this course, because again, this was a junk course. And I want to add an assignment from somewhere else. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with course adding, but we're just going to do assignment adding. So here's a pristine assignment. Here's a pristine course, no assignments. So I'm going to import an assignment and I'm going to choose something and I'm going to choose all public courses. I'll explain what those other terms are in a moment. And then I'm going to select a course. I'm going to do Arabic. And I'm going to select chapter 3, section 7, and I'm going to import that assignment. And you'll look at it goes in the assignment, and here's the question. I only had one question for that assignment. That's because I randomly selected it, and then we're ready to go. So what I'd like you guys to do is I want you to import one assignment from some other course somewhere else. That's obviously a public course, because if it were private, you wouldn't have access to it, and put it into your course that you have brought in. Give me a thumbs up when you've actually done that, please. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me see if I can tell how many people are actually here. I don't have a number. Getting more and more. Okay. So there was a question dealing with, does it have to be Perl? I presume that's asking about web work. Web work has to be Perl. It's written in Perl. If you want to use PHP, you can use iMath AS. It has similar capabilities. And we will have Prairie Learn in our infrastructure that will let you write in Python. But we don't have anything, no one to my knowledge has created an infrastructure around MATLAB or Octave or R. You could theoretically do that, but that's a little bit more data manipulation than what Python's able to do. Okay, so I presume that everybody has created a Christy, Christina Moon says 44. I presume that's not after the 44th president of the United States, which would be George Bush. But uh, anyways, here we go. We have an assignment. We have a question. Here are some assignment properties that are there. These assignment properties are a little bit more complicated, like course properties that you have to go into. It's broken up into 3 general categories that are here. The first one are just generally meta tags, metadata, meta manipulation. These ones here deal with submissions. And this one right here deals with the bigger picture of scores that are there. So I can do a summary, and this just gives me a summary of what that assignment is dealing with. I rarely click on summary. I've been debating for a while in order to remove it, but it's there. And here are properties, and you have properties associated with the assignment, just like you have properties associated with the course. And these properties are a little bit more complicated in order to address than a course. So the first thing to recognize is that we do generate a QR code for the assignment. So you can actually share the URL or the QR code if that's of particular importance to this. Because this is a summative course, the student still needs to register and be enrolled in the class. Let me phrase that. It needs to sign in order to be able to see that. But it's a convenient thing for you to be able to distribute broadly if it works well for you. For example, if you're doing a presentation such. Then you have some metadata that's pretty straightforward: name, public description, private description, textbook URL. The same thing we had before. Instructions. Sometimes it's important in order to have instructions for a specific assignment, which could have some importance for that. In this case here, there's nothing. Notifications. Notifications are meant in order to indicate or sends an email to the student when this assignment's about to be due. And the student gets to decide if they want it to be 24 hours or 36 hours or 10 hours or whatever else. It's the student's prerogative for that. It's just we are trying to make sure that we want to remind the student that the assignment is done. Modality, I mentioned summative versus formative already before. This right here is an assignment classification. So I could say that this assignment is classified as an exam. That's useful when I do grading on our grade book, because I will say, midterms are 40%, final exam is X percent, lecture homework's this percent, weekly homework's this percent. I need to be able to classify the assignments in that case. And then skip over that. Now comes scoring. I have the ability in order to score based on performance or based on completion. So completion is basically said, did they submit it? They submitted it, they get the answer. They get the full score. Performance, they submit it, it's auto-graded, evaluates it, comes back with a score, and then the score gets put down there. So depending upon the nature of the question, it can give partial credit or non-partial credit. You can decide about the points for each of the questions to be either dictated at the question level, or you dictate it at the course level, and it just not randomly, but it just evenly distributes it for every question in there. So it makes it convenient that you have 3 assignments, for example, and you want them to be 100 points each. Well, if one has 10 questions, it's 10 points each question. If one has 9 questions in that assignment, well, each question is worth 11.1. If it happens to be 11 questions, then it's 9.1 or whatever, in order to make sure that it comes up to being 100 points. So that's just the way you have put together. Include in final score. If this is an LMS enabled course, then this will go away. But in our case, it's not. So I do all the calculations on a DAP side in order to be able to do that. Okay, assignment modes. This gets a little bit more complicated. I can make it real time. This is probably one of the most important things that's there. I can make it real time, which means the student submits it and they can get immediate feedback if they're right or wrong. It's great for practice, great for learning, Uh, my assignments typically, weekly assignments are cut up into real time and open ended or delayed. Delayed means the student submits it, it goes into the void, and then it comes back later on with a score. That's necessary if it's an open ended question, meaning it means a TA or a grader in order to evaluate it. But you can also make it so it's auto graded. They just don't get an immediate response until you want to release everything. Uh, I can make it so real time the students can give up, so they can stop submitting, and then they can get the actual solution. Uh, Learning trees is what I'm not going to be discussing this right now. It's a more advanced adaptive infrastructure. Clicker questions, you can actually use adapt in order to take the place of clicker questions. We have a phone app that you can use in order to click on and interact with it and provide real-time feedback on the screen off of that, so you don't have to pay iClicker $40 or whatever it is for their system. Flashcards is a new infrastructure we have where you can actually have cards that students can actually do. So basically, a self-evaluation in order to be able to move things forward with just evaluating these things. Decide the number of attempts. I typically use unlimited as the option, but some people have a limited number. If you want to, you can even give penalties, so they have 5 attempts, but each attempt after one will give 5% deduction. So it makes it it hinders or provides a negative disincentive in order to be able to just randomly pop in numbers. Because sometimes you see students submitting 27 times for a specific problem. They're just randomly going through numbers in order to see what's working right. Um, and I can decide if I want solutions to be viewable. Um, Okay, I'm not going to be discussing these things, those two. Hints are obvious. Dynamic questions. If the question happens to be algorithmic, if it's designed to be algorithmic, then you can turn it on. You can also make pooled questions. So you can say, or pooled assignments. We made an assignment of 20 questions, and you can make it so the students only get three of the questions randomly selected. So it's convenient for a variety of purposes. I use them for my pre-labs. So I want them to be able to master material in the lab reports, but they all have different functionality, different scope, and such. I have a late policy. Um, the late policy is not hinted here. I'm not entirely sure why. Um, if it's broken down. You can accept late, you can mark late, you can accept late with the deduction. And then we have deadlines. So in this case here, you have available deadlines, due deadlines, submission deadlines. This can get really gnarly if you have lots of sections and lots of deadlines. Uh, and we're working on ways in order to try to facilitate that in a more organized manner. But these are only for large enrollment classes where you have serious problems associated with that. And then we have a thing called auto release that I don't want to be able to discuss. If I save it and I do everything right, it saves it. If I do something wrong, it tells me I did something wrong. So basically, the due dates are not right. Uh, so I need to have a different due date. This is the final due date because it's two due dates because I'm accepting things late. Uh, if I accept it, do not accept late, then it's just basically this is the due date period. Uh, and I save it. And there you go. So now I've modified it. So I want you to go through that assignment that you've brought in, and I want you just to modify a couple things in the parameters in order to tweak it. For example, if it happens to be an assessment type that's delayed, make it real time. If it's real time, make it delayed, or any of the other ones. Just feel it out. I'll give you a minute. Give me a thumbs up when you've actually manipulated it. If you have the second thing I would recommend is to play with the late policy. So these are the two ones that I recommend doing it. Is this complicated? Yes. Different people have different pedagogies and how they use questions. So I can't give you the power in order to be able to do this in a variety of different ways without giving you complexity. So play with this. Give me a thumbs up when you've actually tweaked a few of these things. And then I'm going to tie things together near the end. Because the things that we're doing for modifying existing questions or existing assignments is essentially the same thing that we'll be doing for making them from new if you want to be able to make them from scratch. So I'll take a look at the chat. Okay, so nothing question answer, but there are some questions off of here. Thank you for clarifying the 44 questions. Okay, Kevin, I can import all the assignments from a comparable course and then edit and delete questions to customize for yes. So that's basically what we were doing here. The modifying the questions then comes into deleting questions or adding questions. Uh, and the last one I'll be talking about here will be how to add questions in a moment. Uh, uh, Signorina, when searching for assignment to upload, what's the difference between comments? Okay, that's a really good question. I skipped over that. So questions are either public or private, or courses are public or private. So a course that's public, all instructors can see. Uh, Question, same thing. If it's Did I say public? Yeah, it's public. You can see it. If it's private, you can't see it. Only the user and the co-author off of it. However, we do have a special area carved out for public courses that are curated by the Commons, which means just basically our team. This is, look, these are the core questions, core courses that you may want to look at. We call them Commons courses. So if you go into the dashboards, and this is the one thing that I didn't go over, you can go and click on Commons, and then you can actually see, and this, you're going to look a little bit different, but you can come in and do a search, for example, all art. Um, and this is one, art appreciation. There's more that's out there. I can do anthropology, and these are the ones that are in the commons. So I just don't have them in the commons. So these are like the central core ones. We bring in OpenStax books, they're put into here. Okay. Other people can slice and dice them, but you have, like in chemistry, all 1,700 questions for OpenStax. Or Muhammad Malik, who I think was here, creates his own corpus of questions that are brought in here, and they're just sort of centralized in order to be able to pop into it. But otherwise, there's nothing special besides the commons and the conductor and public courses that are commons and public courses that are just common. They're just public. Okay. Uh, Adriana asks, can you set a date in advance for delayed grading assessments? Yes. You can release the dates. So that's its auto date at the bottom. You can decide when you want to release scores, statistics, um, solutions, and technically the questions. So you can make it so the questions doesn't show up. And that's at the bottom. I skipped over that at the bottom of the properties uh, right here, where you can decide how you actually want to do it, and you can control it individually. This right here just says like six. I think the example you did was a week later. So you can say 1 week after close, then release something like that. For example, I release scores, solution statistics 6 hours after the deadline. Gives me a little bit of ability in order to handle it if the student has a problem or something like that. And then it's released to the students that want to start studying exactly the solutions. They can start doing it here immediately. Okay. Francis asks, is there a default late policy for instructors of the course that cascades to all assignments? Um, we talked about this. I don't think we implemented it, but we can at some point. I will make a point in order to bring that up and see if we can actually do that by the end of summer. Um, so you can cascade a single one that's out there. Okay. Senora imported Commons says I do not have access to make changes. I'll have to take a look at Commons if it has some special things. Um, if it says that you can't modify the late policy, save it and then reopen it, and then that edit policy will be changed. We have a slight little bug that's associated with that. I won't be talking about the adding the forge here, but in the next project I will show it briefly. Okay, I want to talk about just one thing. I know I'm 1 minute over, and that's how to add a question to your course. This is an assignment. If I add a question right here, I can add it by doing a search through questions, uh, which I can do here, or I can type in that ID number for an existing question. Uh, I can do searches through here. It's the same search infrastructure in order to be able to come up and say, I want to do something with math. Uh, that's not a very good search for title. but you know, close to 3,000 questions have the word math in it, mostly iMath AS. And you can come in and look at the question right here and decide that if you actually like it or not. So, anyways, I'm 1 minute over. Just to summarize, we were able to import a course, but making a course uses the same properties. You're able to import an assignment, but making an assignment is the same properties. And in this case here, it allows you to delete questions or add questions. And you just have to go through the corpus of questions in order to be able to do that. Making questions is a different skill, but that's beyond what we're talking about here. So with that, you're empowered in order to be able to start really rocking. But of course, there are lots of more sophisticated aspects that we're skipping over. With that, you can feel free to throw out any questions here, but like I said, we're a few minutes over, so I think I have to stop.